So, hello YouTube, what's going on? This is the analyst here with the power rankings for the post draft. So I
Yes,
guess
hello,
let's just
hello.
get right into it.
Yep.
So, for the first team here, the 16th, we have the Fox Creek Arcanines. I guess I'll
Yes.
go ahead and read off the roster here. They have a Mew, Cobalion, Mega Garchomp, Ribombee, Gigalith, Staraptor, Terrakion, Cresselia, Tornadus Eye, Stoutland, and Rotom.
Yes. Um, I don't know what to say about this team, if I'm being honest.
This is a really weird team.
It really is. There's a couple. I think, in my opinion, one of the more quote unquote glaring things I noticed is that his team does not appreciate hazard chip, especially
Yeah,
with the
not
double
at
flying
all. Another
types.
thing I really noticed about his team is that he does not like water types at all.
No, his only real water type quote unquote switch-in is like Rotom, if you can call it a switch-in. He doesn't even have
He doesn't have a water
Rotom.
resist, and he doesn't really have a good like grass or electric type to knock out water's back. So I
Yeah,
think that could be a really big problem for him.
he doesn't even really have a core. He only has one core in the Dragon Fairy Steel.
Yeah,
That's literally he doesn't have a grass type, fire type, water type, none of that.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's just one of those teams where it's like, if I feel like if he had put together a bit more cores, it'd be a much better team. Like he doesn't have a fire, water, grass core, and he doesn't have a fighting type to complete the psychic dark fighting.
he does have fighting.
Oh, I mean, he doesn't have a dark type. Excuse me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think, and it's just one of those things where it's like, cores aren't like vital to making a good draft, but with his team, I think that cores could really benefit,
yeah, yeah,
especially with
definitely.
him completely missing three of the most standard typings. Um, yeah, his only real defensive mon as well is Cresselia. That's or Gigalith. You can also consider a defensive mon, but it hits like a truck. Without needing setup and anything like that. Whereas Cresselia kind of needs to set up in order to be a more offensive threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, his team doesn't really have any good synergy for the most part, apart from the sand quote unquote core. He does get webs, but
I
like
don't really
I
see
don't
how
think.
webs benefit his team too much, though. Really.
Yeah, and he doesn't have he doesn't have anything over base 110, I believe is what Tornadus' speed is at.
I think it's 111.
Oh, it is 111. That's right. That's what
Yeah.
all the incarnate genies are at. You could argue that Stoutland with the Sand Rush is faster than 110, but we're talking about base speeds, not base speeds based on um, beneficial
Yeah.
roll. Um, I would say a lot of problems with this team, like I said, no dark type, no real dedicated bulk apart from Cress and Gigalith. Um, there's a lot of problems with this team.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So should we move on, or do you have anything else you want to say about it?
I think that'll do it. Yeah.
Okay. So in the number 15 spot, we have the Devious Kongs.
Right.
A team of Tapu Fini, Blacephalon, Buzzwole, Mega Aggron, Umbreon, Porygon 2, Zygarde 10, Ditto, Sceptile, Bruxish, and Manectric.
Um, again, this team has definite more bulk.
Yeah.
He has a decent Fairy Dragon Steel, but that specific core doesn't really synergize all that well because he has a bulky Fairy and a bulky Steel, and then has an offensive Dragon.
Yeah.
His Fire Water Grass is actually pretty good. Sceptile Bruxish and Blacephalon. Um, I don't know. For me, at least, his team is very I don't know how to put, like, it's one of those teams where again, the cores aren't up to par. Like, his Firewater Grass is pretty solid. Fairy Dragon Steel, although it has some power, it's one of those things where it's like, generally, if you go with your if you go with cores, right, you're going to want to get one core that's more offensive, one core that's more defensive. And to me, he went for a more offensive Firewater Grass. So then he probably should have chosen a more bulky dragon type out of tier 3 or tier 2 with his extra points that he has.
Yeah. Another thing I want to mention is that he's quite weak to hazards. Like, hazards
Yeah.
could be a problem for him. I think his only defogger is Finny.
Finny, yeah, he doesn't have any spinners either.
Yeah.
So yeah, his only hazard removal is Finny, and it's not that reliable of a defogger.
Yeah.
Mostly because he doesn't have any reliable recovery, which most defoggers and spinners get.
Yeah, but
reliable
he does have
recovery.
the Umbreon, which can Wish Pass, so that could help.
Right, which that pairs with Mega Aggron more than it does Finny, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, his Psychic Fighting Dark is actually pretty decent. But again, like with cores, you tend to go either a more offensive core or a more defensive core. There usually isn't a mixture. Whereas in this, Buzzwole is somewhat bulky. Umbreon is just fat. It's the definition of fat. And then Bruxish is just speed, hit hard, and then get out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, a lot of minor problems and a couple of major problems that kind of put this team lower on the list for us.
Yes. So, you have anything else you want to say, or?
I think that's gonna do it for that one. Yeah.
Okay. So, in the 14th spot here, we have the Montreal Abomasnow. And
Yeah.
they have a team of Volcarona, Megardevoir, Tyrantrum, Tentacruel, Landorus Eye, Latios, Decidueye, Minior, Passimian, Vanillix, and Magneton.
Yeah. Very odd.
Yeah.
The team itself is still very scary. With a lot of its mons like Volcarona and Minior is actually a really scary mon that people don't understand. Like, especially on the like on the Smogon ladder and things like that. Minior just it's pretty bulky, especially in its shields when it's shields in its shield form, and then it gets shell smash, and then just clicks acrobatics, EQ, power gem. It just kind of clicks buttons at that point and things of that nature. But he does have another pretty big weakness to rock type moves. Just Edgequake in general is really good against his team with things like Volcarona just dying to any stone edge, Tyrantrum being 2-hit KO'd by most Earthquakers. Same with Tentacruel. He doesn't have a lot of he has some decent switches to Earthquake, but those mons still get hit pretty hard by Stone Edge.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of real bulk. Really, I would say.
I mean, like, Tentacruel is pretty bulky. Same with Decidueye. And Latios can be bulky if you build it right. But other than that, yeah, not really much bulk. And I will say this. I feel like with Volcarona, if you draft it, you almost always want to make it a Z user, or you're going to have like a really good reason why you didn't make it a Z user.
Yeah, Volcarona definitely should have been the Z user.
Yeah, like, I actually fought this team week 1, and I was like, when I saw that, when I looked more into it, when I saw that his team didn't have Volcarona as a Z user, I was completely shocked. I was like, what? And I was really happy that I wasn't a Z Volcarona, because Z Volcarona kind of rips through my team. But at any rate, like, yeah. his cores as well are very interesting. Like he has a setup sweeper in Volcarona, a bulky spinner in Tentacruel, and then like a bulky defogger in Destitui. And yeah, like you said, not really a whole lot of bulk. The mons I mentioned before, like Latiosif built right, Decidui, and Tentacruel, along with Mega Gardevoir, is surprisingly defensive or physically defensively bulky. It has, I think, I want to say like roughly around 100 physical defense and like roughly 80 base defense or base HP. So it's yeah, I think that's right. So it's pretty bulky for what it is. But at the same time, you don't want to be running like a bulky Wish Mega Gardevoir every week, which I feel like with how his team composition is, that's mostly what his team's going to be.
Yeah, so do you want to move on?
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so in the 13th spot here, we have the Vancouver Volcaronas. He has a team of Tornadus T, Mega Medicham, Milotic, Silvally, Hexorus, Roserade, Magnezone, Aromatisse, Blissey, Armado, and Chandelure. So the first thing
What are your
I noticed
thoughts on
about this team was that it's really slow outside of the Tornadus.
Yeah. Most of his mons rest around 100 to 80
Yeah.
for the most part, and then it just kind of jumps to a Tornadus. I think if he picked up a mon roughly around 110, 115, that could have been really nice. And he does have like pretty good removal with Torn T, Silvally, and Armaldo. But he does have a lot of passive mons like Aromatisse, like Blissey. Milotic is also generally a very passive mon. And I just feel like that kind of hinders his team from what it can be. I mean, there's not like again, his cores are very odd. Like he has Milotic, Roserade, and Chandelure as his core, which Chandelure and Roserade pair really well together. But then you throw Milotic in the mix, and it doesn't make as much sense. And then let's see his Fairy Dragon Steel, Aromatisse, Magnezone, and Haxorus. Again, it's bulk, somewhat bulk, and then offense. I feel like I'm gonna say it just about every time if I see this issue. If you're going to do cores, which most people do cores in every single draft, you need to, I think, at the very least, that one core should be more offensive, one core should be more defensive. And I keep, especially with these lower teams, I keep seeing that as a recurring theme. They don't have a dedicated offensive core and a dedicated defensive core. And I think that's just a glaring issue. Also, no dark type.
Yeah, bulky psychics could definitely be a big problem for this.
Right. I mean, like he does have Chandelure and Armaldo for a bug type and a ghost type, respectively. So I mean that's okay, but with no dark type, it's a hindrance. I mean, like his only dark type would be Silvally Dark if he chooses to bring it, but that's not going to come every week, right? So I just feel like with this team, a good, possibly offensive dark type could really benefit for this team.
Yeah, I think Mega Medicham works really well with like a Pursuit Trapper, and he doesn't really have a good dark type that can do that.
Yeah. I mean, if he had something like Crocodile, I think that would be working really nice. Also, something I just noticed from the looks of things, he doesn't have a ground type either.
Yeah, that could definitely be a problem because people can just volt switch all over his team.
Right. And it's just one of those things where, like, a good ground type is a staple to a draft. If you don't have a good ground type, like you said, then people are just going to be then you're just going to be volt switch on every time. But at least with one, sometimes even two ground types, really benefits because then it forces people to run U-turn over volt switch, or not even, you know what I mean? Not even bring some of those momentum mons. Things like Tapu Koko on this team they can just run Volt Switch and not have to worry. But if he had something like Donphan or Swampert or Seismitoad or anything of that, or Quagsire, then Tapu Koko generally would be forced to run things like U-Turn over Volt Switch, because then it'll get trapped by those bulky ground types, bulky water types, and things like that.
Yeah. So I guess we can move on now
Yes.
to number 12, the Scandinavian Stoutlands. And they have a team of Jirachi, Alolan Ninetales, Thunderous Eye, Starmie, Venusaur, Jellicent, Mega Absol, Heracross, Rhydon, Flygon, and regular Ninetales.
Yeah. One thing I noticed when I first looked at this team, he has double weather, which I find very weird, especially because like the two Ninetales forms, they are complete polar opposites, quite literally, because of their typings. And it's just one of those things where if you're going to run a weather, you generally only want to run one weather. If you have something like T-Tar on your team, you can afford to take another Weathermon, just because T-Tar doesn't always need to run Sandstream. Unnerve, its other ability, is also very good. But with Ninetales, like Alolan Ninetales, its only good ability is Snow Warning. Otherwise, you'd have to use Snow Cloak, which is completely useless, especially if you don't have any other mons that get Snow Warning, like Vanillix. And regular Ninetales, its only other ability is Flash Fire, if I remember correctly, which is a good ability, but in some cases you're going to be forced to run Sun, and then you're going to be forced to run Hail on Ninetales for most of the time, and it just kind of gets counterintuitive.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. Another thing about this team is it doesn't really have good removal at all. Like, what's the
No.
removal? Flygon?
So the removal, Flygon for Defog, Starmie for Rapid Spin. You could technically count Mega Absol for Magic Bounce.
But
And
Mega
then
Absol is really frail. It doesn't really like to switch into things.
No, and then also Thundy Eye. So Thundy Eye, Starmie, and Flygon. That's it.
Yeah.
Which Starmie's a really good spinner, but
Yeah.
Thundy Eye and Flygon aren't going to be defog every week, or shouldn't be defog every week. With Flygon, you're going to want to run a choice move, or excuse me, a choice item, or you're going to want to run D-Dance. And I think with how his team is built, he can't really do that because of his lack of removal.
Yeah.
And his team is,
with
again,
like the cores.
right.
It's a very odd Fairy Dragon Steel.
I mean, the Fairy Dragon Steel is relatively nice. I honestly, I think with Flygon, it's a very underrated Dragon type, and he does. I like that he picked up a couple 4x weaknesses, because that way people can't just run one hidden power. They have to decide between hidden power Steel for Alolan Ninetales, hidden power Flying for Heracross, hidden power Grass for Rhydon, hidden power Ice for Flygon. It works pretty well. I like having anywhere from 2 to 3, 4 times, because of the fact that it forces people to think about what hidden power they run if they choose to run one, what coverage to run, and things like that. So him having that is nice, but at the same time, I think just being able to have, like, I don't know. He also has double water types, which is interesting. Like, they're both weak to basically the exact same. Actually, they're weak to the exact same typings, if I'm correct, apart from bug typing.
Yeah.
I think is the only typing they don't show weakness for, because they're both weak to dark, ghost, electric, grass, and it's like things like knockoff are extremely good against his teams for things like Jellicent, and for Rhydon, and Jirachi as well. He also has double psychic, and he does have Venusaur to take advantage of the sun. So I think that if he decides to make any free agencies, I think especially with the double Ninetales. I think that Alolan Ninetales, possibly for a better fairy type. Because what I'm looking at here, actually, no, he does have a ghost type. Never mind. A better fairy. I think a different fairy type could really benefit on this team. I'm just not seeing how Alolan Ninetales fits.
Yeah. Like, what
Yeah.
does Alolan Ninetales really add to the team?
Aurora Veil. Realistically, that's it.
Yeah.
There are some teams where it's like Alolan Ninetales does fit, but that's generally only running snow. And sometimes that involves things like Beartic or Alolan Sandslash, so it can take advantage of that. Or you could argue Mamoswine because of Snow Cloak or things like that. But yeah, I just think that Alolan Ninetales doesn't really fit on this team. I don't think this team needs the Aurora Veil. And for that reason, like I just don't think it's one of the better drafts. It's definitely on the lower ladder.
Yeah. So I guess we'll move on here to the Uppsala Umbreons.
Yeah.
And he has a team of Mega Venusaur, Skarmory, Keldeo, Galvantula, Gardevoir, Incineroar, Druddigon, Empoleon, Rhyperior, Alolan Sandslash, and Scolipede.
A lot of very interesting picks. Things like Keldeo, I'm personally not the biggest fan of. It's just one of those mons where it's like it doesn't get enough coverage to constitute being a really good mon. He does have decent other his. I think that Keldeo doesn't fit, but Empoleon, in my opinion, fits really well on this team. It works really well with this team, and he does again a lot of double typings. He has double steel. He has double bug. And it's just one of those things where it's like his actually he has triple steel. Excuse me, with Skarmory. I forgot about that. So his team is extremely weak to fire type moves and ground type moves, and it's just Edgequake and fire type coverage runs through this team. In my opinion, things like I think something like Conkeldurr could really do well on this team. I don't know if it's been drafted or not. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think Conkeldurr was drafted, but it was dropped.
Maybe I don't know off the top of my head. If that's something like Conkeldurr over Keldeo would really work in my opinion because he still keeps that fighting typing, but he gets something that gets actual coverage out of it. Because Keldeo gets water and fighting type moves, and then like Grass Knot, and then Icy Wind. That's basically it. That's basically the only coverage it gets. Which for a water type, you're gonna want things like Ice Beam, and with Keldeo, you physically cannot have that.
Yeah.
And I don't see how Alolan Sandslash fits on this team. Period. Like he doesn't need that extra
adds
steel
another
type.
fire weakness, which this team doesn't really need.
He adds another fire weakness. It adds another fighting type weakness because he does have things like Rhyperior and Empoleon and Incineroar that are all weak to fighting type moves. He does have things like Scolipede and Skarmory to kind of neutralize that with, and again with Mega Venusaur. But like, he also has double poison, which can be more beneficial than other things. But I feel like it's just I don't know. It's kind of my opinion, but like his Fire Water Grass is also very nice with Mega Venusaur, Incineroar, and Empoleon pairing really well together. Keldeo you could also constitute in there, but I think that the better core is Mega Venusaur, Mega Venusaur, Empoleon, and Incineroar. Just because they're all pretty bulky in their own right, they're also very offensive threats. Does he have? He does have a dark type. Excuse me. His Dragon Fairy Steel is Gardevoir, Druddigon, Empoleon, or Skarmory, however you want to put it. That's decent. That's actually a pretty decent core. and his Psychic Fighting Dark is pretty nice as well. I don't know. I think a consistent problem with these lower drafts is that the cores don't really meld well together.
Yeah.
For the most part, like his Firewater Grass works really well, but his Psychic Fighting Dark and his Dragon Fairy Steel don't clash that well. Especially when he has things like Triple Steel in this scenario with Alolan Ninetales, or excuse me, Alolan Sandslash, Empoleon, and then Skarmory. Skarmory, a really good Steel type, great defogger along with Empoleon. I don't see how Alolan Sandslash fits on this team. And I don't know. I think that he made a mistake when he drafted both of those bugs because they kind of fill relatively similar roles. They both have their own kind of hazard. They both have their own momentum and utility. I just don't see how, or I don't see why he needs both personally.
I think he should drop Galvantula for maybe like another electric type.
Well, I feel like dropping Scolipede could also be beneficial because I don't see speed passing being that important on this team. And he already has a poison type for Mega Venusaur, and he already has a bug type in Galvantula. Because yes, his fastest Mon is base 108 in the Keldeo and the Galvantula.
I think Scolipede's faster actually.
Oh yeah, Scolipede's 112. That's right. My bad. And at the same time, that's like he gets webs, and he I don't think he needs webs and speed passing. So I think I would say that he should probably drop Scolipede over Galvantula. But if he drops Galvantula, I'm not going to be like super detrimental about it. I'm not going to be super hard on him for it. That's just kind of my opinion on the matter. Again, recurring theme, cores kind of clashing for the most part. A lot of dual typings, which my draft also has some dual typings, but it's not like it's a glaring problem in that draft, and we'll see that here in a moment. But yeah, and his I don't care for Z Scolipede. I think if he had chosen something like Z Gardevoir, that could have worked really well, and then he could have chosen something other than Alolan Sandslash. Like he could have gone with something like Z Gardevoir and maybe like Z Incineroar or Z Jardigon, which Z Jardigon with Sheer Force is very nice. Or not, well, it wouldn't be Sheer Force, but you get the point, right? There are definitely more there are definitely better mons to have the benefit of the Z move than the ones he's chosen.
Yeah. Gardevoir is a very nice Z captain. And is a lot scarier than something like Scolipede.
Right. Yeah, I think like I said, something like one of his tier 3s and then maybe a tier 4 of his would work really nice for his Z-Mons. And it is a little bit harder to do Z-Mons because of how the format works for him, because it's a points system for them. But I just think that I think to wrap this portion of it up, slightly clashing speed tiers, or not speed tiers, cores with the Psychic Fighting Dark and the Dragon Fairy Steel kind of clashing a bit. His speed tiers could be a little bit better, but it's not as bad just because of things like webs and speed pass. A lot of dual typings, a lot of mons that don't really fit on this team. And I guess that's really it with this team. Want to move on to the next?
Yeah, that's your team, right?
That is my team. So
okay,
I'm gonna be biased for a second. I really do think my team is a really solid draft. It has, like I said before, my team has a lot of double typings. Like it has double poison, which isn't the worst thing in the world, and it does have double steel. I say that double poison isn't the worst thing in the world because of Venomoth being neutral to it, and because I have Tapu Bulu, which neutralizes the weakness for the most part. I personally really like my draft. Again, that's biased, but I think so. My draft, as an overview, it's Bulu, Rotom Wash, Zard X, Bronzong, Toxic Crow, Conch Crow, Excadrill, Alolan Golem, Venomoth, Miltank, and Sableye. And I remember when I took Bulu round 1, people were like, "Why did you take Bulu round 1?"
I
Well,
was one of those people. I didn't get it. I don't think Bulu's that good, but that's
I
my opinion.
I use Bulu relatively frequently. It's probably my favorite mon to use in the format. In the standard draft league, not Ubers and things like that, but it's a really good wall breaker. Like I brought Adamant Choice Band Bulu week 1 because of the fact that the guy had no switch-ins apart from Volcarona. And it just kind of just clicks buttons. And I think people very underrate it. I think it is definitely a really, really, really solid mon in the format. I could have taken Zard X round 1, but going into this, I did not plan on getting Zard X. There's a lot of mons on here that I never planned to get. Like I never actually planned on getting Rotom Wash either. I was gonna get something else. I was gonna get a better electro type or a different electro type, and I was gonna grab Mega Blastoise. But then, without paying attention and completely forgetting about my original plan, I grabbed Rotom Wash, and I was like, "Well, can't really grab Mega Blastoise now." So I just kind of rolled with it. And with things like Zard X pairing really nicely with Bulu because of the ground weakness basically being neutralized from the grassy terrain. I personally really like the team. I think it works really well. But that's just me.
Okay, well, I have a couple problems with this team. First
Mm-hmm.
of all, you don't really have the best speed tiers.
I mean, that's fair.
The team is really slow, I would say. Another
Yeah,
thing I don't
I
like is
can.
Excadrill with Bulu. You're gonna be weakening Drill's Earthquakes, and Drill being a really offensive Pokemon, it likes to just click EQ, and it can't do
Yeah,
that.
I
Really
mean, like
terrain.
at the same time though, it does get things like Drill Run, which don't get affected by the terrain. So that's not the worst thing in the world, and it's not like I mean, yes, it's one of its stab moves, but I think that in this case, having the grassy terrain, and it's not like the grassy terrain is going to stick around for the entire battle. It's going to be around for a few turns, and then it's going to be gone. And then at that point, clicking Earthquake is viable, even if I run Drill Run over Earthquake. Even if I run Drill Run over Earthquake, it's still very solid because of the fact that Drill Run has a high crit ratio. And I still think I don't know. I'm gonna be biased over my draft because it's my draft, but I feel like my team is very solid. I think a lot of it synergizes pretty well. I think I do have some pretty decent bulk with things like Bronzong and Miltank and Rotom Wash being like my main bulk core. And then things like Sableye kind of working nicely just because of the fact that it gets Prankster with things like I believe it gets Thunderwave. I know it gets Will-O-Wisp. And just being able to burn things with priority is very Venomoth with Quiver Dance. I don't think that it's the worst problem to have. Like we said with the last team, the Umbreons, yes, their draft is also pretty slow, but it does get things like webs and it gets speed pass. So it's not, you get what I'm kind of saying here.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I just don't like the speed tiers. That's really the main issue I see with it.
I mean, that's fair, but at the same time, I do have really nice scarf options. with things like Alolan Golem being really good Scarfer, Scarf Toxicroak, Scarf Bulu is not that bad. Scarf Rotom Wash is also relatively nice. So I mean, like, that's kind of where I'm fine with my speed tier, just because of the options I have to kind of make up for it.
Yeah, so do you want to move on?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, the Ottawa Garchomps is next, and they have a team of Megadiancy, Zeraora, Komao, Smeargle, Entei, Crobat, Weavile, Celebi, Alamamola, Mudsdale, and Dusclops.
Right. Very solid mons. The only realistic oddball I find with this team is Smeargle. I'm not a big fan of it personally, and especially in tier 3, I think it's overrated. But with other mons that he has, like Entei, incredible wall breaker. People think that it's a really just bad mon, and I'm like, how like, it hurts me a bit because like I'm actually using Entei in a different league, where right now it's going into week 8 and it's second on the kill leaderboards ahead of things like Mega Mawile and things like the Mega Zards. So I mean, I'm the kind of person that thinks the mons that people say aren't that good, I find very good because of the fact that A, I'm going to be able to get them more likely than not, and B, I'm a kind of person that runs a lot of very awkward sets. And I think that the somewhat awkward sets with mons that people claim aren't that viable, I think kind of puts them into the light a little bit.
One thing I want to mention, like you were saying before with the Firewater Grass cores, I don't like this one. You have like a very strong wall breaker in Entei, and then you have like a really passive Pokemon in Alomomola.
Yeah, and then a very kind of neutral one in Celebi.
Yeah.
Like if he had Entei, Celebi, and then something like Primarina, I think that'd be a really good Firewater Grass.
Yeah, but it's just I don't know. It's just Entei and Alomomola is just not great. I think
Right.
getting a more offensive water type to pair with Entei and Celebi would be a lot better.
Right, and he does have things like Mega Diancie and Komo, along with what's his steel type? Does he have actually, he does not have a steel type. I just noticed this. He does not have a steel type. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that actually hinders his team a bit. He also has very awkward speed tiers because it's like it goes from Zeraora to Crobat, which is not that bad of a jump. But then it goes from Crobat to Mega Diancie, which is a 20-point jump.
Well, you have Weavile at 125.
Oh, that's right. I kind of forgot about that for a second. But still, going from 125 to 110, it's not something you want to do. Having it like a 10 to 12 point gap is not that bad. But anything above like 12 or 13 point gaps it just creates for very easy speed creeping.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he has no steel type, which I can't believe I didn't notice that before. He does have mons that aren't heavily used, like Mudsdale, a very good mon that doesn't get used all that often. It's a very good offensive threat. It can be very defensive and very bulky. He has a lot of offensive mons with things like Crobat and Weavile and Entei and Zeraora and Mega Diancie, and it's just one of those things where it's like the cores are a little lackluster, but in this case, his team, I think his team would benefit from a steel type. So something like if he dropped Smeargle, possibly for a steel type, that could be really nice. But yeah, that's just my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, Smeargle doesn't really fit on this team. It's odd, and I don't like Smeargle, especially in draft.
No, yeah, it's just a mon that comes in, click or gets nearly one shot before its focus sash, clicks spore, and then sets up a couple hazards, and that's it. That's all it does.
Yeah.
I think if he manages to get a kill, from a move that's not stealth rocks or spikes or any of that, with like if he's able to get a direct kill with Smeargle, I will be very shocked because it has like base 50 something attack or special attack.
Um.
Uh,
It. Yeah. Like it's very versatile in its moveset, but you can't really put offensive moves on it because it doesn't do damage at all.
right. And there's other things where it's like, he doesn't have a lot of setup opportunity with some of his mons, like Mega Dancy getting Calm Mind and Rock Polish, and then Zorora getting Workup if I'm correct, and then Komo OD Dance and Crobat Agility, although it doesn't need it. Celebi Calm Mind, Mudsdale Iron Defense. Like he has a lot of good setup opportunity with his team, to kind of make up for that awkward speed tier jumps. But that's kind of just my take on it.
Yeah. So I guess we should move on here to number 8, the Toronto Totodiles.
Yeah.
He has a team of Lando T, Arcanine, Scizor, Shaman, Diancie, Dragalge, Cofagrigus, Vikavolt, Salamence, Hitmonchan, and Omega Gyarados.
So right away, what I noticed is he has Double Dragon, which usually is a pretty big deal, but in this case, it's not too bad, just because they don't share a quad ice weakness, which most ice types do. He has a lot. He does have a big ice type weakness with things like Lando T and the dragons, and he doesn't have a whole lot to deal with it apart from Scissor, realistically.
Arcanine as well.
Then, Arcanine as well, right? And he has a few double typings with double bug and I believe, and double dragon as well. And I believe that's it. But like, his core or his Firewater Grass, Arcanine, Shaman, Mega Gyarados, very interesting. Scissor being mostly pretty. It's mostly run bulky with Defog, or it's run SD with Bullet Punch. Excuse me. Shaman, usually, again, it's run relatively bulky with things like Aromatherapy and Seed Flare, whatever. Gyarados, it is a seed, or is a setup mon. Nothing more, nothing less. I have run bulky Mega Gyarados. I was able, a while back, I ran a Mega Gyarados set that was able to take a Bug Buzz from Volcarona and then kill it with Waterfall, which was very fun. Yeah, I had a rest Mega Gyarados because I had Heal Bell opportunities in the bag. That was such a fun game. Any rate, I think it's a solid draft. A lot of 4 times weaknesses, which I said is pretty nice to have because it forces hidden power choice. But in this case, he does have more hidden, like with most people.
Well, I think he would want to run HP Ice more than anything because he has the double 4 times Ice weakness, which I don't like.
Right. So I think that most of the time when you run multiple 4 times weaknesses, you run different 4 times weaknesses. So you would run something that's 4 times weak to grass or water. You would run something that's 4 times weak to ice. You would run something 4 times weak to fighting, like T-Tar. You wouldn't run multiple mons that are quad weak to ice, quad weak to fire, quad weak to this, quad weak to that. It would generally just be one of a couple different ones.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out is that this team is another team that's really slow. Like he doesn't have a
and I think
above base 100.
Right, and I think that's a very common theme with most of the teams that are in this draft. Most of the teams kind of sit around the 110 to 115 range. So this team not having anything above base 100, very glaring.
Yeah, I don't think it's too bad because he has like setup with Salamence, Dragon Dance, and Mega Gyarados, Dragon Dance, and Lando T, Rock Polish. So he has like ways to boost his speed, but like the base speed is really low.
Right, but he does also have Trick Room opportunity with Kofag, and does have a few mons to take advantage of that, like Scissor just being able to click buttons at that point, Vikavolt doing the same thing, Hitmonchan clicking buttons as well. So his team being very slow isn't okay. It is very slow, but he does have many different options to kind of take advantage of that with his setup and his Trick Room opportunity, because of things like Mega Gyarados sitting around base 80 or base 81, excuse me. Things like that are going to be able to take advantage of the Trick Room very well because of the fact that it sits around an awkward speed tier for a lot of mons. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, I think we can. So we have the Yepun Vileplumes.
Coach Troyboyy. Okay, let me
This
head
team is
over here.
Victini, Kartana, Hydreigon, Raikou, Donphan, Mienshao, Estelgor, Zebstrika, Mega Pinsir, Blastoise, and Granbull.
So the first thing I noticed when I looked at this team, it is extremely hyper offense. Or it's not like hyper offense, but it's a very offensive team. He does have some bulk with things like Donphan and Granbull, and Blastoise is somewhat bulky, but he doesn't have really any dedicated bulk, which I think is a problem.
Yeah, but like I feel like a lot of his offensive mons can like take hits too. Like Victini's pretty bulky, Hydreigon's pretty bulky, Raikou's pretty bulky. So like his offensive mons can take hits
Right.
relatively well.
But he also is very weak to stealth rocks with things like Mega Pinsir, Selgor, Victini. His team is very weak to hazards, and not the greatest removal because he only gets he has a
He has
handful of different
double spin,
opportunities,
so I think his removal's alright.
but he doesn't have really a reliable defogger, which I think is kind of an issue. Because his defoggers consist of what? Hydreigon and Kartana. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So I think that if he had something that had defog, I don't understand why a Selgor fits on this team. It sits at a very awkward speed tier because of the fact that it's at base 145. The closest mon to that is Raikou at base 115. So there's a 30-point jump there, and then it goes from that to Mega Pinsir and Mienshao at 105. Or no, it goes to Zebstrika at 116, I think. And a lot of double typings again with Zebstrika and Raikou being double electric, double bug. A lot. There are a few 4x weaknesses with Mega Pinsir, Kartana, and Hydreigon, which him having something like Hydreigon being 4x weak to Fairy isn't that bad because of the fact that there's no hidden power Fairy, but at the same time, it can be very it can be a very bad thing to have something like that where to have something like that where it's not going to have a hidden power that's generally run or that just flat out doesn't exist. Overall, though, it's a solid draft. I just think that if he had a little bit more dedicated bulk or just dedicated bulk in general and didn't have the double typings that he does, I think it'd qualify for a much better draft.
Yeah, I pretty much agree there. So should we move on to number 6?
That works for me.
Okay. So We have the San Antonio Spurs, and he has a team of Tapu Koko, Halucha, Garchomp, Heatran, Alolan Muck, Mantine, Mega Beedrill, Alola Raichu, Quagsire, Pilliswine, and Go-Go.
Right off the bat, again, he has a lot of 4x weaknesses. Garchomp, Heatran, Mantine, Quagsire. All of those, they don't share weaknesses for the most part. So he's able to take advantage of that hidden power crisis that people are going to be running into. He also has Coco Lucha. Oh, good God. That pairing is terrifying, or just any Tapu with Hawlucha is terrifying. And he also has pretty decent speed tiers because his fastest mon is Mega Beedrill at 135, I think it sits at, or it's 140 at
145, and then he has Coco at 130.
Right.
Raichu at 110.
Or yeah, Hawlucha at 118, I believe it sits at.
Yeah.
And then it kind of drops from 110 down to 102, which is not bad. But then it just kind of falls off for the rest of his draft. Because it goes 75 for Heatran, I think base 80, possibly at the highest for Alolan Muck. Mantine sitting around like base 60, I think. And just the rest, most of his other draft mons are sitting at very, very slow tiers. So he has a lot of mons that are base 100 and above, and then it just kind of falls off.
Yeah.
Now, his core Firewater Grass would be Heatran, Mantine, and Go-Goat. That's actually a pretty good speed tier, or core in my opinion. Just because...
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, because like Heatran sets the hazards, Mantine removes them, Go-Goat kind of sits there and sets up and kills things, but it's also very bulky. It gets... his team is very nice because it gets a lot of coverage as well, because... a lot of people don't expect this or know this, but things like Go-Goat, it gets Surf. So does Garchomp. And a lot of his team is able to take advantage of what he has. But something like, I believe it was the last team we saw that had Cofagrigus. Or it was Totodile that had Cofagrigus. So his team is extremely weak to Trick Room.
Yeah, because it's so fast.
It's such a fast draft, which it's not a bad thing to have a speedier draft. But when you don't have mons that sit around that really low speed tier and that kind of middle ground speed tier of base 95 to 80, it becomes a glaring weakness just because of the fact that things like Cofagrigus are able to just set up a Trick Room and then just click buttons, which is I think if he had mons that kind of set around that 90-ish speed tier, I think this would definitely be like a top 5, top 4 draft.
Yeah, it's really solid. Just needs that speed tier.
Yeah, the speed tiers are a little wonky. He was able to acquire 3 different tier 1s, which I think is nice, and he was able to do that. His Dragon Fairy Steel is a little bit more awkward though, just because of Coco not being the most reliable fairy type, just because its only realistic fairy type move that it gets is Dazzling Gleam. It does get Nature's Madness, but hardly anybody runs Nature's Madness Coco. And I just don't think that his Firewater Grass is incredible. I think it's honestly one of the better Firewater Grasses that we've seen so far. But with a more lackluster Dragon Fairy Steel, because yes, Garchomp Coco, incredible pairing, but then it falls off to Heatran, which doesn't really fit in that core. But yeah, again, his team is also relatively weak to Edgequake, with things like Alolan Muck and Heatran and Coco being really weak to Earthquake, and then you have things like Mantine and Beedrill being really weak to Stone Edge. It's just one of the, again, a lot of somewhat glaring weaknesses, but it also has a lot of pluses with that hidden power crisis that people are going to find. And he does have 3 mons to take it, or he has 2 separate mons to take advantage of his terrain, which is something that, in my opinion, is really nice, just because of the fact that like Raichu, if the terrain's up, you can just run Modest and Specs and just kind of click buttons. And I believe it was on the Volcarona's Casey's team. I believe his is the team that doesn't have a ground type. So things like Raichu in that scenario, with the terrain being up, with the possible Specs or Life Orb or Z move, or actually, no, it's not a Z user, so scratch that. But because of it just being able to run Specs or Life Orb or Expert Belt or any of the anything like that with Modest, it just kind of clicks T-Bolt on teams for that in that kind of situation where you don't have a ground type.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that's why we played Casey so low, is because things like Alolan Raichu with the terrain up, they just click T-Bolt. Coco just clicks T-Bolt. And like I said, if this team had more middle ground speed tiers, it would definitely be higher up on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to move on to number 5?
Yeah, let's do that.
Alrighty. Next we have
Some
the
Milwaukee Mudkips.
Mudkips, yes.
They have Jerome Black, Rotom Heat, Florges, Veruzian, Mega Scizor, Seismitoad, Nihilego, Araquanid, Gligar, Hoopa Unbound, and Type Null.
First, one of the first things I noticed, again, a lot of 4 times weak mons. So Virizion being 4 times weak to flying, Mega Scizor 4 times weak to fire, Toad, Grass, Nihilego, ground, and then Gligar Ice and Hoopa Bug. That is a lot of 4 times weaknesses that he's able to take advantage of, because I think he has the most 4 times weaknesses, and to me, having 3 or 4 is a good thing. Having more than that generally isn't that great. Just because the more 4 times weak mon you have, the more shareable weaknesses they're going to have. So things like, what am I looking at here? Things like Gligar and Gligar and Seismitoad, because some grass types or some mons get both grass and ice type coverage and don't need to run that hidden power. And then once they're able to get that ice and grass type coverage, then they can just run like hidden power fire or hidden power bug, or if they're a certain mon, they can do U-turn and kind of just get to a point where they can just kind of click buttons and they have a super effective button.
Yeah.
This team, although it does have some nice, nice speed tiers for the most part, it doesn't have anything sitting above 108, if I'm correct, in Virizion. Everything else,
Virizion is the fastest.
Yeah, everything else. Actually, no. Nihilego is, I believe, 113.
I think it's 103.
Is it 103? No, I think that's its special attack stat. I think it's base 113 speed. I could be wrong, but at any rate, he has, again, a relatively slow draft, but he has a lot of mons that sit around roughly the same speed tier. And it's one of those lower, middle ground to lower speed tiers, which is more beneficial than it is a hindrance in that case. And that way, because he's able to run things like Trick Room for Hoopa Unbound, a base 80 mon, to just kind of go in there and literally click buttons. Things like Hyperspace Fury and Zen Headbutt and things of that nature. Just being able to click buttons in a scenario where Trick Room is very effective, extremely nice. A lot of great wall breakers, notably Kieran Black. That thing is terrifying. Nihilego, very great wall breaker. Araquanid, if you put a choice band on it, very solid wall breaker. Hoopa Unbound, if it's scarfed or if it's under Trick Room, incredible wall breaker. In those kind of scenarios, it's one of the better wall breakers, period, in the format. And then he has decent bulk, with Araquanid being really specially bulky, and then Gligar mostly being physically bulky. And And then Type Null, I think, is his best bulk mon solely because of the fact that it cannot be critted. And then you can just kind of rest up, sleep talk, and it also gets things like U-turn from momentum. And I don't know. His team has a lot of bulky mons, and it doesn't have a whole lot sitting above that or sitting around that base 110 to 115 speed tier. That's very important. But yeah, again, the Firewater Grass is a little awkward again, where it's like Rotom Heat and Verzion can pair, they can pair pretty nicely together depending on the set for Rotom Heat. But then you throw something like Seismitoad or Araquanid in the mix, and it kind of just throws the whole thing off. Just because it doesn't sit around that same sort of speed tier, or it doesn't really do a lot of similar things. It's like the Firewater Grass and Dragon Fairy Steel. Like I said before, you want to draft one that's more bulky, one that's more offensive, and depending on which one you go for, like with his Firewater Grass, it looks to be more offensive with Rotom Heat and then Virizion, but then he throws Araquanid and Seismitoad in there, and it kind of just sets that off. And then things like his Fairy Dragon Steel, Kieran Black, Florges, and Mega Scizor. Florges, Mega Scizor, great bulk pairing. Kieran Black, that thing hits like a giant island. All right, that thing hits hard. And so for that reason, I think that his cores can be better, but it's not like he has bad cores.
Yeah, they could be better, but I'd say they're solid enough. So should we move on to number 4?
I think so.
Okay, so at number 4 we have the Roman Polions, and he has a team of Celesteela, Latias, Suicune, Serena, Crocodile, Cryogonal, Mega Manectric, Comfey, Meloetta, Alola Marowak, and Swampert.
So this team, okay. This is Aaron. He's the for anyone who doesn't know, he's the owner of the league, right? And
Right.
almost every single time I see him draft, if it's in a standard draft format and he has a higher seeding, which is for some reason relatively often because this guy's luck is nuts when it comes to draft spots, he generally drafts the same 3 to 4 mons. If he's higher up on the list, he always grabs Celesteela. He almost always grabs Suicune, and then he usually pairs that with Mega Sceptile. But in this case, he ended up going with Mega Mane, which I was really shocked because as a person who's known the guy for like 6-7 months, and him drafting Mega Sceptile, Latios, or Mega Sceptile, Suicune, Celesteela, almost every single draft that he does, and him not grabbing Mega Sceptile, one of his coveted mons, was incredibly shocking. Excuse me, but his cores are actually pretty nice. His Dragon Fairy Steel, Comfey, Latias, and Celesteela is
I
pretty
feel
nice.
like Comfey doesn't really fit in with the other two.
Well, I kind of disagree, just because like Comfey, it is relatively bulky. It does get cleric moves, so if Steela gets burned or paralyzed or anything like that, then you're just able to go into Comfey, get that off, get the aromatherapy or the heal bell off. You turn out into something like Latias, click a button for the most part, and get a kill. Is really nice, especially because Latias can also be really bulky, along with his Dragon Fairy Steel can be offensive or it can be bulky. That's terrifying to prep for because you're not going to know if he's going to run like a bulky Comfey, a bulky Latias, and a bulky Steela, or if he's going to run offensive of those 3, or if he's going to mix it up and bring like a bulky, annoying Celesteela, and then like a mixed Lottie, and then just a hyper offense like Specs Comfey. His Firewater Grass is also like, it's not the greatest Firewater Grass, but it's also relatively solid with things like Suicune, Serena, and Alola Marowak. Swampert is there as well. It's pretty solid. He doesn't have really any 4x weaknesses apart from Swampert, which is not something that you want, considering the fact that for the most part, Hidden Power Ice goes in on his team, and so does Hidden Power Grass, just being able to take care of that Swampert. It's very annoying for him. But he does have things to rectify. He has a decent speed tier with Mega Mane being at 1. I believe is it 45 again? I believe so.
I think it's 135.
Is it 130? Okay. Or 35, excuse me. It goes from 135 down to Latias at 110, which is not, for what mons they are, isn't like super glaring because of the, Latias being able to run offense or bulk. It can be a very speedy offense mon or, a bulky slow mon. And then it goes from 110, actually it goes from 110 to 105, and then down to, then to 100 with Comfey. But Comfey generally doesn't run a whole lot of speed, if any. So I don't see him running offensive Comfey for the most part, because to me Comfey is more bulky than it is offensive, but it can be both. But it's one of those things where it's like he has pretty good cores. He has decent speed tiers because he has those slower mons like Suicune, like Swampert, like Celesteela. But then he has a lot of things roughly around the the base 110 range. With I believe Meloetta is base 109, or something like that. I could be wrong. And his speed tiers again are a little like his speed tiers are relatively nice, but then you see things that kind of sit around, a lot of mons that sit around the same speed tier, which it can be used to your advantage, but it can also be used to your opponent's advantage. Because things we saw before, like Kofag, with a lot of his mons sitting around the base 100 range, he's people are able to run Trick Room on him, and it's going to be really effective. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. He needs something in that lower speed tier range just to help trickery match up.
Yeah, something sitting around the base 85 range could be really nice for his team. More things around the base 75 range, because I think Swampert is base 70 or 75, if I'm not wrong. It might be like base 60, and I'm probably just talking here. But I think if he a glaring problem with a lot of these teams is they don't have a whole lot of mons sitting around the base 80 range for most of them, and to me that's a pretty decent sized problem, because then people know where to speed creep and where not to speed creep with things sitting around base 80 that are also very solid. It forces your opponent to run a lot of speed on something he doesn't want to run a lot of speed on, or run no speed because he doesn't need to.
Yeah, so do you want to move on?
Yeah, let's move on to the number 3 slot.
Okay, that's going to be the Los Angeles Lopunny. And he has a team of Mega Lopunny, Zapdos, Gudra, Nidoqueen, Rotom-Mow, Darmanitan, Necrozma, Fortress, Slurpuff, Zoroark, and Wishiwashi.
Very scary draft. The only mon I don't see fitting on this team, and I think you can agree with me on this, I don't see Wishiwashi fitting on this team.
Yeah, Wishiwashi is a really weird pick. I think he would need a different water.
There are definitely other tier 5 waters that are probably better. Like, people put a lot of talk a lot of smack about the Gen 5 monkeys. Honestly, I would prefer to have Simipour over Wishiwashi. That's just my opinion. Just because I don't care for Wishy-Washy. I think that there are a lot of there are some ups for it where it's relatively bulky and relatively offensive, and it being a Z user is nice, but I just don't think that it makes up for the fact that it's just the weirdest pick he could have made. I know a guy who generally does one off the wall pick for every draft. He's like, all right, because of how I am, I have to pick one mon that makes no sense for any reason. And I'm like, okay, so maybe that's what he did here. Maybe that's what the low punnies did here, grabbing Wishy-Washy, a mon that is just very off the wall and completely out there, and doesn't really fit many roles apart from it being a water type for his core, which again, his core is extremely weird because you have Wishy-Washy, I think it's at like base 30 or 20, something around there. And then you have Darmanitan and Rotom-Mow, which are more offensive types. And then his Dragon Fairy Steel, again, very weird. Gudra being really slow and really bulky. Fortress being somewhat slow and being extremely bulky and doing things like volt switching around and setting up hazards and whatnot. And then you have Slurpuff, which quite literally just clicks Belly Drum, clicks Play Rough, and just kills things. It does have some utility in the fact that it gets sticky webs, but other than that, yeah, I don't know. He does have some good bulk as well with things like, like I said, Gudra is very especially bulky. Zapdos being really bulky. Nidoqueen being very bulky. Necrozma and Fortress. But his cores are his cores generally are pretty awkward just because he has 2 offensive mons and then 1 really defensive mon, or in the Firewater Grass's case, just 1 mon that makes no sense.
Yeah. Another thing I want to mention is the speed tiers. He has Mega Lopunny, which is all the way at like 135, and then it drops off to Zoroark.
Right. If he had a base 110, 115 mon, which, again, with a lot of these teams, they need that 110 mon to solidify the speed tiers being very solid. And with this team, he has 1 4x weakness in Fortress. And a lot of things get fire type coverage, and a lot of things can run HP fire very well. Like my Rotom Wash on the Rotom Wash on my team, Hidden Power Fire with Rotom Wash, very nice against this team because it just kind of volt switches around, clicks Hydro Pump, and then HP fires in the Fortress. And you could argue that, okay, well, you can just run Aya Papa Berry or Oka Berry or anything like that. But then you're just kind of being forced into having that item because of the fact that you don't have any other 4x weaknesses to distract your opponent. What are any other thoughts?
No, not really. So I guess we can just move on to the Torcats.
Yes, the Detroit Torcats.
So
let me pull up his team here.
There's a team of Zygarde 50, Sylveon, Metagross, Infernape, Tangrowth, Vaporeon, Swellow, Alolan Persian, Claydol, Mega Aerodactyl, and Raichu.
Right off the bat, I love his Dragon Fairy Steel being relatively bulky offensive mon in Zygarde, bulky offense in Metagross, and then bulky offense in Sylveon. I think that pairs extremely well, especially because Sylveon is able to Wish Pass into those other 2 mons. And then his Firewater Grass is where it gets a little iffy for me. He has
you have Tangrowth and Vaporeon, which are more bulky, and then you have Infernape, which is like super offensive.
Right, and it's like Vaporeon has, I believe it's like 130 special attack or something crazy like that. And then Tangrowth having like base 125 special attack. So they can be offensive mons, but generally you run them defensively, and then you have something like Infernape, which goes in, clicks close combat or Flare Blitz, and then leaves. So his Dragon Fairy Steel is incredible. His Firewater Grass is weird. But he does have other mons. Like he has okay speed tiers. He has 150 in Mega Arrow, 125 in Swallow, and then it goes to Alolan Persian at 115, or no, I believe it's like 116, I think. And then it goes to Infernape at 108. And then it just kind of drops down to Zygarde and Raichu at base 95. And then it just kind of gets really slow. Which, in my opinion, it's like, and we've talked about this for just about every draft we've mentioned so far. Having those rounded speed tiers is incredibly important. I do want to mention, however, his Psychic Fighting Dark doesn't synergize that well because you have Claydol being more bulky, and then you have things like Alolan Persian and Infernape, which are more utility or offensive mons. So that's kind of where my thoughts lie with this team. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
So I guess should we move on to number 1?
Which, yeah, if you haven't figured out what the number 1 is by now, yeah, it is the Reno Raikou, coached by Kohanx, who I personally know. I'm actually in his league drafting right now, as we speak. So his team consists of Megalade, Clefable, Ferrothorn, Greninja, Torrent, Gliscor, Snorlax, Reuniclus, Electros, Magmortar, Kyurem, and Mismagius. Right off the bat, his Dragon Fairy Steel, again, a little awkward. Ferrothorn and Clefable synergize incredibly well together, and then you throw something like Kyurem into the mix that doesn't fit as well as you probably could. So going with something like a bulky dragon, even though it was drafted like Dragology, probably would have been a better pick than Kyurem, in my opinion, for this team. Just because it's able to kind of sponge hits a little bit better, create a Soul Fest user, and things like that. His Firewater Grass being Magmortar, Greninja Torrent, and Ferrothorn. Now, that is very interesting to say the least. Like, Greninja and Magmortar synergize relatively well just because they both have really high attacking and special attacking stats. And then Ferrothorn, which has a really good physically attacking stat, but it's extremely bulky and extremely slow and doesn't really synergize with the other two mons in that core. Again, his Psychic, he doesn't have a Dark type either. Actually, no, he does. He has Greninja, excuse me. His Psychic Fighting Dark is Megalade and then Greninja. Generally with cores, you don't want to draft a mon that is a double typing unless you're going to draft every mon that's double typing. So it's like, if you're going to grab something like, if like for your Firewater Grass core, if you're going to do like Tapu Fini as your Water Fairy, and then something like, I don't know, Empoleon, and then, or not Empoleon, like if you're going to do Tapu Fini, Ferrothorn, and then like Turtonator is the only one that's allowed in this format, that, if you're going to do something like that, that's fine. But if you're going to do a double typing, don't make it so you have two mons. If you're going to do double typings, stick to double typings. His speed tiers are not bad, actually. His speed tiers are actually pretty...
Speed tiers are really solid, I think.
Yeah, he has
and
really
I like
good...
that he even has the Trick Room option with Reuniclus.
Right, for his slower mons like Reuniclus. like McMortar, which I think is like base 90 speed, but it's not generally running a lot of speed. And Clefable and Ferrothorn being extremely slow, but having really good offensive stats, you're able to set up a Trick Room with Reuniclus, switch out into Ferrothorn, and click Gyro Ball. Or Power Whip. And then things like Snorlax as well takes really good advantage of that Trick Room because of its ability to curse up, make itself extremely slow, and then gradually become faster than every Mon in your opponent's draft. And then just being able to click buttons at that point. So overall, I'd say, yeah, this is definitely the best draft in the league. But like every other team, there is a few problems and a few tweaks. Now, with this is just I'm sending this message to every coach in the division or in the league. You don't have to take our advice with the things that we say, like with maybe adjusting your speed tiers or making trades and things like that. But I would say, at the very least, take a look at it, and if you agree with us, then I would say make some transactions. If you disagree, that's fine too, because like we're doing this for fun. We're not making anything out of it. We're just doing it because we want to, and because it's something we chose to do. So we do take. I at the very least take criticism relatively well. I accept it for the most part. So if someone thinks that their team was placed too low, or we were a little too harsh on their draft, I'm open. My Discord DMs are open, so you can talk to me there if you want. You can ping me in the server as well. But I think that at the very least is going to wrap it up. Do you have any final messages?
Just thanks for watching, everyone. And I hope you'll stay tuned for all the games coming up. I don't know how many coaches are uploading. I think there were like 3 or 4 draft analysis posted.
I think there was a few more. I think there was like 5 or 6 uploaded. I know I saw Sventhun's on his. I saw Devious Dittos, and I saw Kohanx's. I think I saw like 1 or 2 more. I could be wrong, but a lot of coaches are doing their own draft analysis, and they are uploading their battles. So you can always come in the server and like invite your friends to the server so they can check out your stuff, or post your stuff in other servers, just to get a little bit more publicity for your stuff and for the league in general. At any rate, I've had a lot of fun doing this today, and I'm gonna have a lot of fun doing it in the future. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. So like Lucario said, thanks for watching. If you choose to follow the league, follow the league. We do have a Twitter. I don't know it off the top of my head. But
it'll be linked in the description.
And then possibly the coaches who are uploading, they might be linked in the description. I don't know because I'm not editing this. But if they are linked in the description, check them out. I know a lot of them personally. They're very good guys. Very good group of coaches that we have this season. But yeah, I think that's going to do it here. So thank you guys for watching. And I guess we'll see you guys for the week 1 power rankings.